Hey, welcome to the definitive guide to watching the Monogatari series. Monogatari series is weird and complicated for multiple reasons, but probably the most intimidating thing for newcomers is just how to watch or read the thing at all. Right now is probably the best time there's ever been to get into the series, what with how many significant releases there's been in the past few years, but it's also the most convoluted it's ever been as well. My personal issue is that there's now conflicting opinions on exactly how to watch it, which only makes it more worse and inaccessible. But fear not, because I'm here to try my best to explain everything in depth and in the most concise way that I can. I'm also going to note when something is just subjective and not a fact. But if you don't care much about the details and just want the orders, just use the timestamps in the description. But I think you'll have a much better understanding if you just bear with me for now and watch the full video. Probably. Or this would be a big convoluted mess. I hope not! Monogatari doesn't follow the typical anime method of release. Forget all you know about a manga that gets a 12-episode series, maybe a sequel season, and dies forever. This is a completely different format. Monogatari Series is a light novel series with over 23 different books, and still counting. Each installment of the series ends with the Monogatari suffix, hence the name of the series. The series is made up of different story chapters, usually referred to as arcs, which have their own titles, such as Hitaki Crab or Sudaga Devil, which are names of different characters followed by a noun. Each arc typically has a strong relation to each character. Some installments have multiple volumes with multiple arcs, some only have one volume and one arc, and some have one volume with multiple arcs. Basically, some installments of the series are made up of multiple parts, while others are just one big part in of themselves. You might be wondering, with all these books, how does it organize itself? And that's through seasons. For the most part, both the novels and anime series are organized based off of the novels seasons. Something you need to know is that when you refer to a season in Monogatari series, you'll usually be talking about the seasons relative to the novels. What would normally be considered a season in terms of anime should in this case be considered a core, because the anime series mostly just adapts individual books. It doesn't group everything together, most of the time. We'll get to that later. If you need a comparison, it's kind of like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and how the source material has different parts of the franchise that the show adapts in its own way. 4 of the 7 parts of JoJo have been adapted, but there isn't 4 seasons of JoJo. The first season adapted part 1 and 2, while the next 2 seasons adapted part 3, and the 5th adapted part 4. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is that a show can be grouped in a way outside of how it is released in TV cores. Even though JoJo was released differently than the manga, most people that watch it are aware of the divisions of manga parts and how they divide the show. Monogatari currently has 5 seasons total. First season, second season, final season, off season, and monster season. Final season is not actually the last season because basically the author changed his mind. The first 3 seasons mostly take place over the course of the main character's final school year in high school. Off-season fills in gaps and sets up monster season, which continues the story into his college years and beyond. We'll call the 2 years the school year spans through year 1 and year 2, as I have no official name. While it isn't 100% the case, each season generally takes place during a set time span of each year. For instance, second season spans from March to August in year 1, and second season spans from August to January in year 1 into year 2. While the seasons themselves generally occur in a chronological sequence from each other, the arcs within them are mixed in terms of chronological placement to form a sort of meta-narrative. I know that sounds bizarre and unconventional, but trust me, it's how the stories were meant to be experienced. So that's a lot of the basic information. Now we can start to dive a little deeper into what makes up this idea of a meta-narrative. The real question is exactly how the order should be shuffled. And the difficult thing to explain is that, as of now, this series has multiple orders that you can go with. Unlike years ago, now that we've gotten as far as we have with adaptations, there is no longer one completely definitive rule of thumb order to experience the series in. Now I know that sounds scary and intimidating, but again, I think it makes a lot more sense with context. While the series is scrambled depending on the order, they aren't that scrambled. Basically, the only reason there is multiple orders is because the order the show released adaptations of the books in was a slightly different order than how they were released as novels. This is just because there's a few instances where they skipped a book for later, whether that be for production issues or just being an order the studio preferred. The fact that this series has scrambled meta-narratives also introduces the option for a traditional chronological order. So, in terms of the main, most official orders, there are 4. Some fans have their own subjective placements with slight differences, but I'll cover that briefly a little later. The 4 most official orders are Anime Release Order, or the Shaft Order being the studio that makes the adaptations, Novel Release Order, or Nisio Isin Order being the author of the books, English Novel Release Order, also known as Vertical Order due to that being the publisher of the English novels, and Chronological Order, which is, like I said, a more traditional order with things happening in a chronological sequence. First, I need to break down Nisio, or novel release order, because I think it's important for context. Novel release order is the order the author himself released the stories in. If you want the completely original experience, you would go with this order, but that's not necessarily the best option as it might seem, nor what I would personally recommend. It is still completely viable, but for now, it's just important to know for context. So, first season has Bakemonogatari, Kizumonogatari, Nisei Monogatari, and the first volume of Nekomonogatari. Like I said, seasons usually go over a set time span. So if we look at the chronological order, you would see that these stories are all next to each other, but they are in a different order chronologically. The best way to think of it is that Bake, the first part of the series, has 2 prequels and 1 sequel. Kizumonogatari, which takes place first chronologically, is basically the origin story of the series. Keep that in mind for later. Next is second season, which has the second volume of Nekomonogatari, Kabuki Monogatari, Hana Monogatari, Otori Monogatari, Oni Monogatari, and Koi Monogatari. Generally, these alternate between 2 time periods, during the end of the summer, and a progression from fall into winter, except for one that takes place in the March in the feature. It's one of those exceptions. There's also one arc that happens concurrently with 3 other arcs, one of which doesn't come until final season. Also note that these are all 1 arc, 1 book releases compared to the first season that had some books with multiple volumes and arcs. Final season was meant to be the end of the series, but it's more so just ends the first major story arc. A big chunk of it is retrospectives and important gaps being filled before it gets back to where it left off into a finale. There's Tsuki Monogatari, Koyomi Monogatari, Owari Monogatari, and Zuko Owari Monogatari. Tsuki Monogatari takes place in February after Koi at the end of second season. Koyomi Monogatari has 12 short stories that take place over the entire year. Owari Monogatari takes place during the fall, summer, and spring in each of its respective volumes, and Zuko Owari Monogatari takes place just after the last volume of Owari. Most of the Kiyomi Monogatari stories aren't that important to the main story, but they do provide little bits of info and end with 2 stories that do directly relate to the main plot. This might seem annoying to people that just want the main story, but you have to understand that the writer of the series likes to do weird stuff with how it's released, and apparently he wrote Koyomi Monogatari completely on a whim. With how final season is ordered in novel release order, it teases the advancement towards the finale, does a total retrospective, then advances the story just a little before ending with a pretty big cliffhanger. Then it goes back yet again, having another 2 arcs that take place a little before this advancement, and then finally has everything come together in Owari Volume 3 and a sort of epilogue in Zuko Owari Monogatari. So, that was a lot. But you thought I was done? Nope. There's still 2 more seasons left, but these have yet to get any anime adaptations at all, so there's a little bit less info on them. Not to mention, one of them only has 1 book released so far. Off-season has mostly side stories, but not in the sense of Koyomi Monogatari. These are, for the most part, more proper stories that generally add character development and lore to the series. They also seem to mostly set up monster season. It has Oroka Monogatari, Waza Monogatari, Nare Monogatari, and Musubi Monogatari. A lot of these stories take place after Zuko Owari Monogatari, though some happen in the middle of second season, and one takes place 600 years ago. Musubi Monogatari takes place 5 years after Zuko Owari Monogatari. Monster season is mostly supposed to take place between Zuko Owari into Musubi Monogatari and the main character's college years. Only 1 book has been released in it so far, Shinobu Monogatari. The rest of the series has been outlined to have Yoi Monogatari, Amari Monogatari, Ogi Monogatari, and Shino Monogatari as 2 volumes to be released within the coming years. And that is it, as far as we know. There could very well be more after that, but this is as far as it's supposed to go for now. So if we look at Shaft, or anime release order, like I said, it isn't that different. Most anime adaptations were released as individual book adaptations. Books with multiple arcs typically got their own core that ran through a standard anime season. Some 1-arc books were released as specials that had all episodes released at once. The only exception would be second season, which groups all but 1 story into 1 core, and Owari Monogatari, which adapted the first 2 volumes into 1 core, and released the 3rd volume as a 2-day special years later. But anyway, in terms of the actual order, there's a few parts that release slightly different than the book. There are 3 particular instances in which the meta-narrative was changed due to a difference in release order. The origin story, Kizumonogatari, wasn't released until way later in between Owari Monogatari, just before the finale of the first 3 seasons. As I said, most of second season is grouped into one core, except for Hana, which was released separately like Neko Kuro after second season. And lastly, Koyomi Monogatari was skipped to come in between Owari along with Kizu. These skips change the meta-narrative in slightly different ways, but the biggest change is easily with Kizu Monogatari, where you basically get a full retrospective of the very beginning before the very end. And most of the series you're left with the mystery of what happened in the origin story. Basically, this is the way that most people have seen the series in because it used to be the rule of thumb order when Kizu wasn't out yet. So generally, you'd want to go this order if you want the original experience that most English-speaking fans have had, besides those that read the Kizu fan translation online. Some people criticize this order because Kizu is pretty important to fully understand certain arcs, but I for one recommend this order because it's how most have experienced the series, putting everyone on the same page. And I also think a lot of the skips actually make sense and improve the story. So this is where I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent and be a little bit more subjective. Without being too spoilery, having Hana come after Koi answers a cliffhanger that was left ambiguous at the end of Koi. If you were to go novel order, it would reveal the answer of the cliffhanger before it happens, which sort of ruins the impact it provides in the new order. Koyomi and Kizu coming in the middle of Owari makes it so you get two flashbacks that fill in gaps, a sort of retrospective of the entire series that leads into a cliffhanger, which leads into a retrospective explaining the origin story that then picks up where the cliffhanger was. That's a lot of retrospective, I know. The original order isn't ultimately that different in terms of Koyomi. You still get a lot of the retrospective. I just think having the very beginning of the series coming before the end works really, really well. It's amazing in many ways to see how far the series and its characters have come, so I'm personally a big fan of this order. But that's just my opinion, and I'll probably elaborate more on that in a future video. Some people say Kizu should come before Koyomi, but after Owari Part 2, because some argue it flows better. But I generally don't like subjective orders since they're not really based on anything official. At the end of the day, as a film series that kind of stands on its own feet, it doesn't matter that much when you watch Kizu, but following the placements in the orders is the most official and recommended. Hell, most fans ended up reading the Kizu Monogatari English book right before the films came out, which will deliver a slightly different experience. But still, a lot of people watched it in anime release order. I'm still not done. Speaking of which, there is another official order that offers a minor adjustment to where Kizu should be, otherwise it's so far the same as anime release order. The English novels recently started with Kizu Monogatari. The author said in the author's note that he thinks it can come before Bake, so yeah, it's another viable option, I guess. I'd argue that starting with the Kizu book is a little different than starting with the film series since it has a lot more detail and some feel the films are made in a way that expects you to already be familiar with the series and the book, so yeah. But in terms of general story, it's a pretty good starting point. You could call this the vertical release order, as they are the publishing company that releases the English novels. Lastly, is chronological. I won't be going over the specifics since I already explained most of it. All you really need to know is that it's generally agreed you should not watch it like this for the first time. In general, chronological works pretty well, but I mostly advise going this way for a rewatch or reread. It's also the least accessible order as it requires the viewer to jump back and forth between anime cores or books in some places instead of just finishing each at a time. If you thought all this was already overwhelming, this order is going to be at least 5 times worse. So which order should you go with? Again, the thing that's equally as frustrating as it is brilliant is that there is no clear answer. The series is written in such an interesting way that it could be watched in many, many orders, and there could still work pretty well at the end. I mean, you could probably just go completely random and it could still work okay. Maybe. I don't know. You probably shouldn't do that though. Just base it off what you prioritize and make the decision for yourself. So, to summarize, here is the short version of each order. First, Shaft or anime release order, which I personally recommend, but you don't have to take my word for it. Generally, this is the way that most have seen the series in that have watched it as it aired. Besides the improvements that I know I like from watching it compared to other orders in general, I personally like seeing the original viewing experience of things. This is much like how I like to watch the original trilogy of Star Wars first, before the prequels, and then the sequels. So generally, pick this if that relates to you, or if you like the idea of having the origin story remain a mystery for most of the series. And the order goes: Bake Monogatari, Nisei Monogatari, Neko Monogatari Kuro. Second season, which contains all of these in this order: Hana Monogatari, Tsuki Monogatari, Wari Monogatari Part 1 being the first 13 or 12 episodes on Crunchyroll, which contains these arcs: Koyomi Monogatari, Kizu Monogatari Part 1, 2, and 3, Wari Monogatari Part 2, which has the remaining episodes with these arcs, Tsukowari Monogatari, and then assuming they come out in this order, Roka Monogatari, Waza Monogatari, Nade Monogatari, Musubi Monogatari, Shinobu Monogatari, Yoi Monogatari, Mari Monogatari, Ogi Monogatari, and Shino Monogatari. Okay. Next is novel release order, or Nisio Isen order. This is the way the stories were originally released. It has its pros, but it's less common to viewers and subjectively misses some of the improvements the Shaft order has. But still viable. If you like the idea that the author is always right and you want to see the original vision he had, go with this order. Bakemonogatari, Kizumonogatari, Nisemonogatari, Nekomonogatari, second season, but in this order: Tsukimonogatari, Koyomi Monogatari, Owari Monogatari, Zuko-Owari Monogatari, assuming they come out this way, Odoka Monogatari, Waza Monogatari, Nare Monogatari, Musubi Monogatari, Shinobu Monogatari, Yoi Monogatari, Amari Monogatari, Ogi Monogatari, Shino Monogatari. Then the rest are just kind of minor adjustment orders. First, the only official one of these is the English novel release order, also known as the vertical release order. English novel release order is the same as anime release order so far. It just has Kizu come first and gives you the origin story at the very beginning. The rest of these are unofficial, and I personally don't like them, but I think they're still worth mentioning. There's the Kizu after Bake, Koyomi in the middle of Owari 1 and 2. This basically just makes the Kizumonogatari placement of the order and combines it with the Koyomi Monogatari placement of anime release order, which gives you the origin story first but keeps the improvements made from the anime release order shuffles. There's also Kizumonogatari coming in between Owari 1 and Koyomi. Another minor adjustment to anime release order, it just arguably makes certain plot points flow better. Okay. Lastly is Chronological Order, which is good for a rewatch, a reread, but easily the most inaccessible and probably not good for a first-time watcher read. I highly advise you not to go this way when starting, especially since not everything has been adapted or translated. This also doesn't include the Koyomi Monogatari shorts because they're hard to place in specific points. If you want to know the general areas in which they take place, just look at this graphic, okay? Waza Monogatari as in Ace Roa Bon Appetit, Kizu Monogatari, Nekomonogatari Black, Bakemonogatari, Nisemonogatari, Kabuki Monogatari, Oni Monogatari, Owari Monogatari Volume 2, Nekomonogatari, which occurs concurrently with Oni Monogatari and Owari Monogatari Volume 2, Owari Monogatari Volume 1, Waza Monogatari as in Tsubasa Sleeping, Oroka Monogatari as in Sodachi Fiasco, Otori Monogatari, Koi Monogatari, Tsuki Monogatari, Owari Monogatari Volume 3, Zuko Owari Monogatari, Hana Monogatari, Shinobu Monogatari, Waza Monogatari as in Karen Ogre, Oroka Monogatari as in Suruga Bonehead, Oroka Monogatari as in Tsukihi Undo, Nare Monogatari, and Musubi Monogatari. Currently, we don't know where the unreleased books take place, but there you go. Alright, we're done. I hope you'll join me in another 4 years when this video becomes obsolete again. Okay, bye.